Tell the judge you're broke. Elena, don't you dare humiliate us in there. My mother's voice cut through the marble hallway outside Courtroom 7 like a blade wrapped in perfume. I stood beside a row of hard wooden benches in the federal building in Denver. The kind of place where your footsteps sound too loud and your heartbeat feels like evidence. My younger sister, Paige, waited a few feet away with her attorney. Chin lifted, eyes shining with the calm confidence of someone who believes the room will always take her side. My dad didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead. Jaw clenched. Wearing the expression he saved for strangers when he wanted them to think he was a good man, forced into a painful decision. Inside, the air smelled faintly of copier toner and old coffee. A court clerk called our case, and we filed in as if we were a normal family attending a normal proceeding. Not three people trying to erase the fourth. I sat at the respondent's table in a plain charcoal suit that cost more than my mother's handbag. Not to show off, but because I refused to look like the version of me they kept describing. My attorney, Mariah Bennett, placed a folder in front of me and gave me a small nod. Calm, grounded, unmoved by theater. Paige's attorney stood immediately. Voice smooth and loud enough to reach the last row. Your Honor, my client is a creditor. Years ago, she advanced substantial funds to her sister's company under a family-backed internal agreement. That debt remains unpaid. The respondent's company is insolvent, and we seek relief to protect my client's rights. Insolvent. He said it like he was reading a diagnosis. My mother made a soft crying sound on cue, dabbing dry eyes with a designer handkerchief. My dad nodded slowly, as if each nod could turn a lie into a fact. Paige sat very still, lips pressed into a thin, satisfied line. She looked like she was watching a door finally close on me. I kept my hands folded on the table. I did not look at her. I looked at the bench. The judge, a tall man with silver hair and tired eyes, listened without expression. He flipped through the petition, then through the attachments Paige's attorney had submitted with a flourish, like he was handing over a winning lottery ticket. Additional asset and tax records were filed late last night. Your Honor, the attorney said, they reflect the respondent's current condition. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanned the pages, and the courtroom grew quiet in that particular way. It does when everyone senses a turning point, but doesn't know who it will crush. He read for a long moment. Then he stopped. He removed his glasses. He looked down again. Then he looked up, and his voice carried like it didn't need a microphone. I've reviewed the asset and tax records, he said. Someone in this courtroom is lying to my face. Paige's confident expression vanished so fast, it was almost physically visible. My mother's sobbing stopped mid-breath. Handkerchief frozen against her cheek, my dad's nod died in place. And for the first time all morning, he looked unsure of what he was supposed to do with his hands. I sat very still, because I had imagined this exact sentence for years. Not as revenge, as confirmation. People assume betrayal feels like a single explosion. For me, it was a slow leak that started in our house in Fort Collins, where Paige was the miracle baby and I was the practice child. Paige got praise for being charming. I got lectures for being difficult. Paige got forgiveness before she apologized. I got punishment before I explained. When I built my company, I did it without a dime from them. I worked nights, slept on couches, and learned how to read contracts the way other people read bedtime stories. When it started to succeed, my parents told people I was lucky. When it started to matter, Paige told people she supported me early. That was the pattern. They didn't want my life. They wanted ownership of it. Now, we were here, in a courtroom full of strangers, and my family had dressed their greed in the language of concern. The judge's gaze moved from Paige to her attorney to my parents, then settled briefly on me, like he was taking my measure. My attorney stood, voice steady. "Your Honor," Mariah said, "we welcome the court's scrutiny. We are prepared to address the inconsistencies the court has identified." Paige's attorney swallowed. My mother's fingers tightened around her handkerchief, and I felt, for the first time in a long time, something loosen inside my chest. Not relief yet, but the beginning of it. Before we go deeper, thank you for being here with me. If this opening hits something familiar, I genuinely appreciate your support with a like, a comment, a share, or a subscribe. I read your stories, and I'm grateful you're listening. The judge's words didn't just hang in the air, they changed the oxygen in the room. Paige's attorney recovered first, clearing his throat like he could cough his way back into control. "Your Honor, my client has provided truthful documentation. If there's confusion, we can clarify it's not confusion." The judge cut in, voice flat. "It's inconsistency." My mother squeezed her eyes shut and let out another sob. Louder this time. The kind that tells everyone in the room, "Look at me. I'm suffering." My father leaned toward her as if to comfort her, but his eyes stayed on the bench. He looked like a man watching a floor crack under his feet. Paige finally spoke, soft and wounded. "I didn't want to do this," she said. "I'm just trying to be repaid." I almost smiled at the precision of it. She wasn't pleading with me. She was pleading with the room. With the judge. With the imagined jury of strangers she believed would automatically side with the youngest daughter and the crying parents. Mariah leaned toward me and whispered, "Let her talk." I had been letting Paige talk my whole life. Growing up, Paige could break a lamp, and my parents would laugh and call it an accident. I could forget to empty the dishwasher, and my dad would lecture me about responsibility like it was a moral defect. Paige was sensitive. I was stubborn. Paige was creative. I was cold. Every label was designed to make her soft and me sharp. By the time I was 17, I learned a rule that kept me alive in that house: don't react. If you react, they turn your reaction into the story. So I became quiet. I became capable. I became the one who handled things. When I moved to Boulder for college, I worked 2 jobs and lived on ramen and library air conditioning. When I started my company, I took meetings with investors who looked at me like a gamble and vendors who treated me like a kid. I slept in my office. I taught myself how to read financial statements at 2 a.m. because I couldn't afford mistakes. Paige watched from a distance and called it cute. Then, 3 years into my company's growth, she showed up with tears and a smile. "I want to support you," she said, sliding a thin packet across my desk like a peace offering. "A family loan. You pay it back when you can. Mom and Dad will finally feel included." My gut told me no, but my exhaustion told me maybe this was how normal families worked. I didn't sign. I asked questions. Paige's smile tightened. That night, my mother called and said, "Why are you punishing your sister for loving you?" Punishing. Loving. The words were always flipped in our house. Mariah reviewed the packet and said, "This isn't support. This is leverage. It's vague on purpose. It allows her to claim creditor status later." I told Paige no. A week later, she wired money anyway. She did it in 3 smaller transfers. Not one. Like she was deliberately creating a paper trail. Then she texted me, "See, I helped. You can't say I didn't. I sent it back immediately. Paige replied with a laughing emoji and said, "You're so dramatic." But the money didn't disappear. 2 days after I returned it, the same amount appeared again through a different account, labeled consulting reimbursement. Then a third time, labeled advance. That's when I realized what she was doing. She wasn't trying to fund my business. She was trying to route money through it. Paige had a talent for living beyond her means. New car leases, luxury rentals, weekend trips that never matched her paycheck. My parents called her free-spirited. I called it what it was, debt. And when debt catches up, people like Paige don't downsize. They hide. So I started keeping records the way Grandma Maddox taught me when I was little. If someone wants to rewrite your life, keep the receipts. I saved every email, every transfer notice, every text. I kept screenshots of Paige asking my finance lead to classify a personal expense as a vendor invoice. I kept the voicemail where my dad said, "Just help your sister this once. Elena, we'll handle it later." They never handled it later. They handled it by choosing Paige's comfort over my boundaries. Again and again. And now, years later, they had walked into a courtroom and tried to use that manufactured paper trail as a weapon. The judge tapped his pen against the bench. "Counsel," he said to Paige's attorney, "I am ordering full discovery. Bank statements, tax transcripts, loan documentation, and communication records related to these transfers. Complete production. No summaries." Paige's attorney stiffened. "Your Honor?" "That's extensive." The judge's gaze sharpened. "Then you should have brought clean records." Mariah stood. "Your Honor, we request reciprocal production, including the plaintiff's personal financial records for the period in question, and metadata for all files submitted. There are indications of irregularities." Paige's eyes widened. "Just slightly." My mother's crying faltered. My father's hands tightened together. The judge nodded once. "Granted. Both sides will comply. Deadlines will be strict." Paige's attorney leaned toward her and whispered urgently. Paige nodded, but her throat worked like she was swallowing panic. Because discovery is where stories die. It's where bank lines don't care about tears. And as we left the courtroom for a brief recess, my mother hissed under her breath, "You're really doing this." I looked at her calmly. "You started this." Mariah touched my elbow gently. "We're close," she murmured. "Let them keep talking." I watched Paige ahead of us. Walking too fast in heels, she suddenly didn't seem steady in. And I thought the same thing I'd thought for years. The truth doesn't need volume. It just needs daylight. 2 nights after the judge ordered discovery, my mother texted me like nothing had happened. "Family dinner. Your father wants peace. Come." Peace, in my family, was always code for surrender. I told Mariah about it. And she said, "If you go, don't go alone. And don't sign anything." So I went. Not because I wanted their table, but because I needed to see what they were trying to build outside the courtroom. Lies don't stay in one place. They spread. My parents' house in Fort Collins looked exactly the same from the outside. Tidy and warm and harmless. Like it belonged to people who didn't weaponize love. Inside, the dining room was set like a holiday. Candles. Place cards. A roast that smelled too expensive. And around the table sat not just my parents and Paige, but 2 aunts, an uncle, and my mother's best friend from church. Witnesses. Paige's phone was already propped against a water glass. Camera lens pointed toward my chair. My mother smiled. Too bright. There she is. We're so glad you came. My father stood and pulled out a chair. His voice sounded gentle, practiced. Let's talk like adults. I sat down slowly, placed my purse in my lap, and scanned the faces. Everyone looked at me like I was late to my own trial. Paige didn't wait. She slid a folder across the table like she was serving dessert. I wrote up something simple. She said, a settlement agreement. You admit you owe me. You agree to a repayment plan. And we end the embarrassment. Embarrassment. Not lawsuit. Not debt. Embarrassment. Because to Paige, public perception was the only currency that mattered. I didn't touch the folder. Send it to my attorney. My mother's smile snapped. Why do you have to make everything so hostile? I kept my voice calm. Because you invited an audience. My aunt cleared her throat. Elena. Honey. We're just worried. Your mom has been crying for days. Paige's mouth twitched. I didn't want to do discovery, she said softly. But the judge forced it. And I'm terrified. Elena, I'm scared you'll ruin me. There was the performance again. The trembling voice. The wounded eyes. She was so good at it that for 1 second, my chest tightened with an old reflex, comfort her. Then I remembered the transfers. The labels. The advance she used like a hook. My father leaned forward. Just sign something tonight, he said quietly. Make it stop. I looked at him. Make what stop? The truth, his face hardened. The fighting. Paige's fiancé wasn't there. That was interesting. Either he was smarter than he looked, or he'd already started backing away from the smoke. Paige's phone light blinked. Recording. My mother clasped her hands like she was praying. We raised you, she said. We gave you everything. And now you're dragging your sister into court like she's a criminal. I felt my pulse steady. She dragged me. My uncle sighed. Heavy and disappointed. Paige says, you're hiding money. Paige nodded quickly. She's not broke. She's pretending. She's always had this superiority thing. She thinks she's better than us, my mother added. Louder. She always has. Ever since she left for Boulder. She came back with that attitude. Like we're beneath her. There it was. The real wound. Not money. My independence. Paige slid the folder closer again. Just sign, she whispered. Voice. Sweet. Say you owe me. We can do this quietly. Quietly meant privately. Before the court saw the real records. I opened my mouth to speak. And my phone buzzed in my lap. A text from an unknown number. I glanced down. And my stomach dropped. It was a screenshot of an email. Timestamped an hour earlier. Subject urgent request to correct descriptors on statement. And, beneath it, a message, Ms. Maddox. I'm not supposed to contact you directly. But your sister Paige called our branch again. She asked us to adjust old statement labels and remove certain merchant descriptions. We refused. This may be relevant to your case. Please have your counsel subpoena the call logs. Signed. N. Harper. My throat went dry. Across the table. Paige was still talking. Still playing wounded. Still pretending this dinner was about reconciliation. And suddenly I saw it, with crystal clarity. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a trap. A stage for a confession they could film and hand to the court. My mother leaned forward. Voice sharp. Well, are you going to sign or not? I stood up slowly. The room stilled. Paige's eyes widened. Elena. Don't be dramatic. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my hands on the table. I didn't even look angry. I simply said, "No." My father's face flushed. "No to what?" "No to being cornered." I answered, "No to signing lies. No to you using family like a weapon." My mother hissed, "You'll regret this." I looked at Paige's phone. Still recording. Then at Paige's face. "I'm done performing." I said calmly, "See you in court." Then I walked out. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't give them the breakdown they'd rehearsed for. I stepped into the cold Colorado night, shut the door behind me, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. If Paige wanted daylight, she was about to get it. By Monday morning, Mariah had the subpoena requests drafted, and my phone was full of missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Paige was hunting for a new angle, and my mother was recruiting anyone who still answered her. I didn't pick up. Instead, I sat in my office downtown, the same office I'd built from an empty suite and a folding table, and watched my legal team turn my family's story into a timeline of facts. Discovery isn't glamorous. It's not courtroom speeches and surprise confessions. It's spreadsheets, metadata, and the kind of dull repetition that makes truth undeniable. Mariah brought in a forensic accountant named Derek Kwan, a quiet man who wore plain sweaters and spoke like every word cost money. He didn't care about my mother's tears or Paige's charm. He cared about patterns. He cared about intent. On the first day, Derek found something that made his eyebrows lift slightly, which for him was basically alarm bells. "These transfers Paige calls a loan," he said, pointing at his screen, "don't originate from her earnings." I leaned forward. "Where do they originate?" He highlighted a column. "Short-term cash advances. A high-interest lender." Then a second line from a credit card balance transfer. Then an inflow from a personal loan under your father's name. My stomach tightened. "Dad's name," Derek nodded. "Yes. There's a signature match on the loan application, and the timing suggests the funds were cycled through your business within days." Mariah looked up. "So your parents were involved?" I didn't answer immediately. My mind flashed to my father's voice on the phone years ago, telling me to just help your sister this once. Back then, I thought he meant emotionally. He meant financially, Derek continued. Also, several transaction descriptors were altered. Not by you. By the bank's statement software logs. He slid a printout across my desk. "Your sister requested changes. We have call logs, and we have the bank's internal notes. She attempted to remove merchant descriptions that would reveal the funds were used to pay her own liabilities." My breath left my lungs slowly. Not because I was surprised, because now it was provable. Mariah tapped the report. "This is huge. It's not just a family dispute. It's misrepresentation and potentially fraud." My phone buzzed with another voicemail from my mother. I didn't listen. I didn't need her voice. I had her trail. By midweek, the court ordered a compliance conference. Paige's attorney submitted a partial production that was suspiciously clean, like someone had scrubbed it. Derek caught it immediately. "These PDFs were generated after the discovery order," he said. "They're not original. Metadata shows they were exported from a personal device and reassembled." Mariah's eyes narrowed. "So they're still trying to manipulate evidence?" Derek nodded. "Yes. Which makes the bank employee's message even more important. We should subpoena the bank's native statement files and call recordings." We did. On Thursday afternoon, Mariah walked into my office holding a folder. Her expression controlled but bright in a way I'd never seen from her before. "We got the bank's native files," she said. I stood slowly. And the original descriptors show Paige used those funds to pay off a delinquent lease, a collections firm, and a private credit card settlement, she said. She ran it through your business to make it look like she had income and to build a loan narrative. My skin went cold. Derek added, your parents' emails indicate they knew. There's a thread where your mother says, if we route it through Elena, no one will question it. And your father replies, just make sure Paige looks clean. The room fell silent. There are moments when betrayal stops being emotional and becomes almost clinical. You're no longer dealing with confusion or hurt, you're dealing with diagnosis. My parents didn't just favor Paige. They partnered with her. Mariah sat down across from me. Elena, the court is going to be furious, but we need to decide how you want this to land. I stared at the folder. I want the truth to land clean. She nodded. Then, we present it clearly. No grandstanding. The judge already suspects lying. We show intent, manipulation, and the attempt to coerce you into signing a confession. That night, my company held its quarterly all-hands meeting. I stood in front of my employees and spoke about the future. Not about my family. Not about the case. I talked about our product roadmap, our values, and our next phase of growth. Because my life was bigger than Paige's scheme. After the meeting, my COO pulled me aside. You okay? She asked quietly. I took one breath. Then another. I will be. The truth is, my reputation had taken hits before. Paige had planted little rumors for years. Elena's cold. Elena's greedy. Elena thinks she's better than us. But rumors dissolve when facts arrive. The judge scheduled the decisive hearing for the following Tuesday. 1 week? Paige didn't know it yet. But the story she built was about to collapse under the weight of its own paper trail. And this time, the court wasn't going to just deny her petition. It was going to ask why it was ever filed. The Tuesday hearing didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a reckoning scheduled on the court calendar. Courtroom 7 was fuller than before. A few local reporters sat in the back with notepads, drawn by the words creditor dispute and federal discovery violations. Paige arrived in a pale blouse. Hair, perfect. Expression, carefully fragile. My mother came in clutching the same handkerchief, already damp. As if she'd soaked it on purpose, my father looked gray around the mouth. The way people look when they know the truth is about to be spoken in a room they can't control. Mariah walked beside me with a slim binder. No theatrics, just the weight of evidence. The judge took the bench and didn't waste time. Counsel, he said, looking directly at Paige's attorney. Before we proceed, I want to address discovery, compliance, and the authenticity of filings submitted by the plaintiff. Paige's attorney stood. His voice was softer than last time. Your Honor, we have cooperated fully to the best of our ability. The judge raised a hand. No. 1 syllable. And the room tightened. The judge glanced down at his notes. This court ordered complete production. Instead, the plaintiff provided partial records, documents with altered metadata, and materials that do not match native files produced by subpoena. Paige's breath hitched. My mother's handkerchief froze mid-dab. Mariah rose. Your Honor, may we present the bank's native statement files, call logs, and the forensic accounting report proceed. The judge said. Mariah walked to the screen. And Derek's clean. Clinical charts appeared in front of everyone. A timeline of transfers, the origin of funds, the short-term lender inflows, the balance transfers, the personal loan under my father's name, then the most damning part, The bank's internal notes and recorded call logs, showing Paige requested descriptor changes to remove merchant names connected to her liabilities. Paige's attorney stared at the screen like he was seeing it for the first time. Mariah didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. These transfers were not a good faith family loan, she said. They were routed through Ms. Maddox's business to obscure the plaintiff's financial condition and create a manufactured creditor narrative. The judge leaned forward slightly. Plaintiff, he said, turning to Paige. Did you contact your bank, requesting changes to transaction descriptors? Paige's lips parted. She glanced toward my mother, then toward her attorney, searching for a script. Her attorney started to speak. Your Honor, the judge held up a hand. I asked the plaintiff. Paige's voice came out thin. I didn't understand what I was asking. The judge's expression didn't soften. You asked to remove merchant descriptors. You asked to correct labels. You asked multiple times. According to logs, that is not misunderstanding. That is intent. My mother let out a sob that sounded almost angry. She was scared. She cried. She didn't mean any harm. The judge's eyes shifted to my parents. And you, he said, are listed in emails discussing routing funds through the respondent's business to keep the plaintiff clean. My father's shoulders dropped. My mother's face tightened. Mariah submitted the email chain. The words appeared on the screen in my mother's exact tone if we route it through Elena. No one will question it. Make sure Paige looks clean. The courtroom went silent. My mother whispered, That's out of context. The judge's voice turned colder. There is no context in which that is appropriate. He looked down at the petition again and then back up. This petition is denied, he said, with prejudice. Paige flinched as if the words were physical. The judge continued. The court finds the filing to be in bad faith, supported by misrepresentations and improper conduct during discovery. Sanctions will be issued. Fees will be assessed. Additionally, any further attempts to coerce the respondent into signing agreements outside counsel will be viewed as harassment. Paige's attorney's face went pale. My mother's handkerchief fell into her lap. My father stared at the floor. The judge leaned back slightly and looked at me for the first time that day with something that wasn't judgment. Ms. Maddox, he said, you are not insolvent. You are not the problem in this case. You are free to proceed without interference from this petition. The gavel struck. And that was it. Not a dramatic courtroom gasp. Not a movie ending. Just truth entering the record and refusing to leave. Outside the courtroom, Paige tried to speak to me. Her voice shook. Not with remorse, but with panic. Elena, please. We can fix this. I looked at her calmly. You had years to fix yourself without using me. My mother stepped forward. Eyes wet and furious. You didn't have to destroy your sister. I met her gaze. I didn't destroy her. I stopped covering for her. My father stood behind them like a man who wanted to disappear. He didn't defend me. He didn't attack me. He just looked hollow. And for once, that emptiness wasn't my burden to fill. I walked out into the Denver sunlight and felt my shoulders drop. As if I'd been wearing their lies like a coat for too long and finally set it down. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Before we close, thank you for staying with me through Elena's story. If it resonated with you, I genuinely appreciate your support with a like, a comment, a share, or a subscribe. Your words matter to me, and I read them with real gratitude.